right foot here. Welcome, everyone. I will call to order the Milton School Board meeting for Monday, February 22nd. Please join me in a salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. Thank you. Action on the agenda. Do we know of any changes, Mr. Dahman?
No changes to the agenda.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second. Thank you. Motion from Rick, seconded by Dave to approve the agenda. Questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed. Agenda is good. Action on the minutes, which as usual are in board docs.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the regular meeting held on February 8th, 2021 as presented. Second.
Okay, motion from Jennifer, seconded by Shelley to approve the previous meeting minutes. Questions on the minutes? All in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Minutes are approved. Vouchers are next, the list of which is included.
I got to mute, sorry. Bear with me a moment there, sorry.
Do you want us to wait, Dave?
Someone else can move it. He can wait. He can.
I will make a motion to approve general checking account vouchers totaling $213,893.66 and the building fund 49 vouchers totaling $3,260,580.81 as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, thanks. Motion from Mike, seconded by Rick to approve the vouchers in the amounts you just heard. Are there any questions on those? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the vouchers signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you. The vouchers are good. I picked up the public comment sheet. It has no one on it. Did anybody indicate anything remotely or email-wise? Okay. We will move past public comment. 2 on the agenda, big number 2, is the referendum discussion and or update. So we will invite Mr. Huffman to the podium. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. And first, I apologize. Due to calendar failure, I failed to get a report in your board package. So I'll follow up tonight with some pictures.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe. Can you do it?
Give her a card here.
There we go.
Said he just logged out. It might be laptop issues.
Yeah, it was a microphone. It was right there.
Oh, no, it's popped up. Okay, great. So once again, my apologies for missing your board packet for written information. There's quite a lot of activity right now across the board on our projects. The middle school is very much focused on the turnover activities. So finishes have gone into the new addition. Just recently, the epoxy tops in the science rooms got installed. Some of the furniture has been delivered, and we've had 1 and tomorrow 2 meetings focused on move coordination. So very much focused on the occupancy of the new addition. On the existing portion of the building. The kitchen renovation has been ongoing. That's sort of done in two halves as we've renovated the space behind the existing kitchen, and brand new kitchen equipment has recently been installed there. And then we'll be able to transition to taking over the existing kitchen space. There's also an interior block of rooms where construction is just starting on that, and that'll take us out into the summer, as will the site work there. We'll just be waiting for good weather. May look at some opportunities to be more aggressive than the schedule has. Right now, on the schedule, we have starting after school to start with all of the site work, but we think there's some opportunities to get some site work done in late April and May, even while school is still in session there. Obviously want to make sure we're not hindering any of the school operations there, but we're looking for opportunities. Over at the high school, the STEM wing is in sort of the same mode, getting ready for move-in. A lot of the equipment is starting to be installed. The Prometheum boards are being installed by your staff, the school staff, and other equipment is being installed. We will be doing our punch list there in a couple of weeks, and be ready to turn the STEM wing over. As you work your way around the building, the new pool, the deep end has been entirely excavated, and the foundation walls have been poured, and now they're going to work over and start excavating for the shallow end of the pool. In the locker rooms there, they're as far as putting tile on the walls in the bathrooms, so that's going quite well. And then over the space that we thought might be the most challenging is the existing pool space. That pool has been drained, and the pool deck has been hammered out. And happy to say there have not been many discoveries there. We did find an old abandoned storm sewer structure, underneath one of your locker room floors. It had been abandoned and just covered over. So we're gonna take a little bit more care to fill it and plug it and sort of permanently work over the top of it. I think the one discovery that we have had is if you're familiar with I guess I'll call it the wonky hallway that takes you from your current gym over past what was the wrestling area and then down into the locker rooms. You would have been walking through a corridor that was added at some point outside of that exterior wall, which is the pool wall. Well, you'd notice that it's a warped floor. And I think the discovery has been that the reason it's warped is that there really weren't adequate footings added for that hallway addition. So we're going to do a more extensive demolition there and sort of re-bolstering of what was the former exterior wall, the wall of the pool, to make sure that that's got a good, robust foundation. And then we'll recreate the wall of that corridor. And then, of course, at the same time, the new event entry into that space. So that was a bit of a discovery where they're in a design process right now to make sure we've got all of the structural remediation right. But it looks like, while there'll be some added costs there, don't feel that it's going to be anything too significant. So I think your position with the contingency, it really hasn't changed since last month. Your position is good. We seem to be past the most risky parts, although I will say that we do have some intervention on the removing some roof trusses at the pool area and creating the pop-up for the new event entry. So that's probably the last spot of the biggest risk in discovering something that wasn't known in the design process. But all in all, feeling pretty confident with where we are in the contingency position.
And with that, I'll take any of your questions.
Anybody got anything for Mike? If not, keep bringing the good news. We'll see you in a month.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, on to the superintendent update. The first part of that will be Rich's portion, update on the moving forward plan.
I have a couple different things that I want to highlight related to the Milton Forward Plan. First, I want to share that I've made a number of school visits. I've gotten out into each of the schools, every school over the past 2 weeks in classrooms. Have had hallway discussions. Wanted to get both a focus on the two things that we really talk about a lot are providing that high quality instruction and limiting the risk to our students and staff and families and communities. And I'm happy to report that I saw that how well the safety protocol were being followed in our classrooms, in our hallways, in our lunchrooms, and also saw some high quality education taking place. So that was good to see over the last couple weeks. I'll give a brief update on the COVID numbers from Rock County. We continue to meet every Thursday with the other Rock County superintendents and with representatives from Rock County Public Health. And the number of positive cases per 10,000 is continuing to decline both across the county and in our school district. Those numbers aren't specific to our students and staff. Those are all community members that live within our school district. And they are down to levels from back before the numbers really peaked in November and December. So back to kind of the September and October range. So it's a promising trend and it's continued to decrease. They have said that the number of patients in Rock County hospitals is down. As of Thursday last week, there were 14 COVID-19 patients in Rock County hospitals. A few of them were quite serious, but that number is lower than it has been in recent months. Some hospitals are still reporting critical staffing shortages, and that has kept Rock County Health Department from moving out of phase one. They've mentioned the last couple weeks that a lot of the data that they look at is showing that a move from phase one to phase two could be coming up soon, but they're waiting until the hospitals give some clearance on those staffing shortages. They also gave an update on the vaccine across the county. As of last Thursday, over 22,000 members of the county had received their first dose of the vaccine, and over 9,000 had received their second dose. And when we get to our HR committee update later on in the agenda, one of the agenda items will be an update on our staff's vaccine clinic, the second dose clinic that took place last week. So you'll hear more about that coming up. Included in board docs is the Milton Forward Family Guide. And Kim, if you can pull that up, there is one thing in there that is a change that I want to highlight for the board and the community. If you go to page 6 has some information about now that we do have some staff members who have been quarantined and others who have been quarantined. Page 6 includes some guidance for vaccinated, some staff members who have been vaccinated and others who have been vaccinated. Page 6 includes some guidance for those vaccinated individuals. In the top part of that page, it reinforces that even though people have been vaccinated, they still need to continue to wear their mask, their face mask at all times, following the same guidelines that we've had in place, and also maintain the other safety protocols, self-screening every day, social distancing guidelines, and all of our safety and mitigation strategies. The bottom part of that page talks about if someone has been vaccinated and they are a close contact to someone who is positive, do they have to be quarantined? And this follows new guidance from the CDC that Rock County has also updated. And as you can see there, if someone has been vaccinated, they won't be required to be quarantined if they meet those 3 criteria in the bullet points. They have to be fully vaccinated, And that means at least 2 weeks past receiving their second dose of a 2-dose series or the first dose of a 1-dose series. So at least 2 weeks after their vaccination is finished, within 90 days of the last dose of the vaccine, and they are currently asymptomatic since the current COVID-19 exposure. So as we get to that point where our staff members reach that 2-week window, and if they are close contacts to someone who does test positive, as long as they're asymptomatic and it's between that 2 weeks and 90 days, they would not need to be quarantined, which will help us with some of our staffing issues that we've had throughout the school year in our schools. The other thing that I want to share during this agenda item is some discussion about conversations that we've been having about returning to school. Before I dive into that, any questions or comments from the board members on the update that I've given so far? If not, as we've been talking about the possibility of returning more students to on-site instruction, we've kept in mind that balance of limiting the risk and providing high-quality education and how that changes as the situation changes. With the active COVID cases dropping across the county and across our school district, and some neighboring school districts are considering returning more students or have already returned more students to either their elementary schools, their secondary schools, or across their whole district. We've had some discussions at both our elementary and secondary levels about what would need to be in place in order for us to do that. And I'll kind of break it into those two parts. I'll share some information about the conversation at our elementary schools, our 4K through 6th grade school buildings, and then at our 7th through 12th grade schools. At our 4K through 6, we have had a couple different windows where families who chose to have their students take part on site have been able to do that. We did that at the start of the year, and then at the semester break, we allowed families to switch from virtual to on-site or vice versa. With that last deadline, or that last change, back in late January at the semester break, we have had some families ask if we would open that up again so that they would have an option of changing, of switching from either on-site to virtual or vice versa. We know that if we do open that up, that there will be more families that will have their students come on site. And we know that especially for our younger students, higher quality education can take place on site versus virtual. So we've had some discussions about reopening that window, giving families one more chance to choose to have the students come on site. But I wanted to update the board on what that potentially would look like and the different factors that we're weighing as we're making that decision. We would maintain our cohorts if we did that. We don't want to take a student who's been with an individual teacher so far this year and move them to a different teacher. But while maintaining those cohorts with additional students coming on site, those cohorts would become larger. Larger cohorts means that there would be less physical distancing, and it would be more difficult to contact trace if someone does test positive. We also would have more students on each bus route. When we made that change back in January, we increased the number of students on our routes, and we would need to do that again if we added more students to on-site. And a couple other areas that would be a concern, our lunchroom would be a concern because not only are students closer together at times during that time, but they also have their masks off so that they can eat and drink their meals. So the lunchrooms and the space in the lunchrooms is a concern. There would definitely need to be some preparation for the lunchrooms and for the classrooms. If you recall back at the start of the year when we set up our smaller cohorts, we moved a lot of our desks and tables out of the classrooms to provide more space for the physical distancing. So if we're bringing new students back, our custodial staff would need some time to bring some more desks and tables and chairs into each classroom. And we also would have an impact on our staffing. It's very possible that we would need to add some staff, either for permanent staff for the rest of the year, or perhaps another full-time substitute teachers to make sure that we have enough staff available to cover the additional students that would be coming on site. With the 4K through 6, we've talked a little bit about if we made that change, what that timing would look like. And we would need at least a couple weeks to get everything ready to bring students on. So I'll share in a little bit what our plans are to get more information and to help make that decision. And then for 7th through 12th grade, some of those same issues would be in place. There'd be many more concerns or more issues with physical distancing at the middle school and the high school. Right now, we have the hybrid A day and B day. And when we take out the approximately 14% or so of students that are choosing to be fully virtual, and then we split that into the two cohorts, we're able to maintain that physical distancing pretty well at the middle school and the high school. The issue becomes if we bring all of the students back in every day rather than the cohort A day and B day, the classrooms become much larger. The physical distancing within the classroom lessens. The physical distancing in the hallway and in the lunchroom becomes less, and on the transportation becomes less. And at the middle school and the high school, because students are changing from classroom to classroom throughout the day, the contact tracing becomes much more difficult. If there is a student who tests positive, they're much more likely to be a close contact to multiple other students or staff members because they're moving from classroom to classroom throughout the day. Because of that and the difficulty with contact tracing, with that being the case, if we do bring all of our middle school and high school students back every day, rather than the A day and the B day, it does make it more likely that we would have to go fully virtual for the quarantine time, for up to 14 days for quarantine for the entire school, rather than just choose the people who are close contacts during that time. Other concerns at the high school, again, I mentioned transportation. The lunchroom, even more of a concern at the middle school and high school than it is at the elementary, both from a seating standpoint and staffing from our school nutrition department. They are a little bit short-staffed right now, and to continue to provide our meals for our virtual students and then also have more students eating on site every day would be a concern. The classrooms with furniture and seating, the same issue as the middle school. We've moved desks and tables out that we need to be moved back in. One thing that would make this much more feasible at the middle school and high school would be in late March when we open up, or early April when we open up our additional spaces at the middle school and the high school, our STEM wing, the new classrooms at the middle school. Those new spaces and the new furniture would provide an increased ability to spread students out in physical distance. We also have Wisconsin Forward testing, particularly with students who have a 504 plan or an IEP. It might require a smaller space for testing. Plans are in place on how to do that through March and into early April at our different schools, and those plans would need to be updated if we brought all of our students back. And then we also would have a staffing concern at the middle school and high school. We shifted some staff to north side, if you remember, from the start of the year, so that we could have smaller cohorts at our elementary schools. So we would have to look at how we would be able to make sure that we had enough staff in place to make this work. So the next steps that we're planning, one thing that we did back in the late summer leading to the start of this school year is we brought the Milton Forward Plan to the board. The board approved the plan, but the board also gave the district administrator the authority to make changes in that as the situation changed. So we're still operating under that guidance. If the board would prefer to change that, and the board would prefer to not have the district administrator make that decision, then we could bring that back at the next board meeting for a board decision. So that's one thing that we should talk through. We plan later this week to send out a survey to all 4K through 6th grade families to find out if they are interested in switching from on-site to virtual or virtual to on-site, so that we have an idea of how many of those students there are. Once we get those numbers, we would look at what potential class sizes would be and what transportation needs would be, and whether we would be able to maintain that balance of limiting the risk and providing that high quality education. And then if we did decide to move forward, either at the elementary or at the secondary or at both levels, if we did decide to move forward, we would have to determine what those dates would be. As I mentioned earlier, at the middle school and the high school, it'd be really difficult to do this prior to spring break. Spring break is when we open up our additional spaces at the middle school and the high school. That would give, if we do make that decision, that would give us time to communicate that plan out to families, allow staff time to make plans for the rest of the school year, and allow our building and ground staff the opportunity to prepare our building for that change. At the elementary schools, there wouldn't be as much need for significant changes. So, but at the earliest, it would be probably 2 weeks after we made the decision to give staff time to make plans and to give parents time to make plans. So I wanted to make sure the board was alert to conversations that we've had on that topic. As I mentioned before, there are a number of districts in our area that have moved to all day, every day model. Another neighboring district, Edgerton, is discussing it at their board meeting tonight and potentially could be moving forward with it. So be open to thoughts, comments, questions from board members on that topic.
Okay, covered a lot of ground, so go ahead.
Thanks for the info, Rich. I think it's great. I think everyone agrees that we all want as many kids back in school as soon as possible. I'm afraid that we might be jumping the gun a little bit. Numbers are getting better. I guess I would like to see them a lot better for a lot longer period of time, maybe, before we have this conversation. What's Rock County say about this?
It's been a topic of conversation over the past few weeks with Rock County Public Health, because there are some districts who are part of that group who have made this move. They have said that they have their guidelines in place. They reinforce that we should follow the CDC guidelines. We've looked at the CDC guidelines and feel that we can bring students back and still stay within those guidelines. So Rock County isn't saying don't do it. They're cautious that if districts do make this move, to not go into it with the idea that this means that you don't have to follow the safety protocol that's in place. They really reinforced the importance that if districts do this, to keep that physical distancing as much as you can, to maintain the wearing of the masks at all the times that we're wearing them now, to reinforce the importance of self-screening for both students and staff members every day before coming into school. That we don't say things aren't back to normal if we make that move. There's still concerns that we have, and we need to make sure that we'd be doing everything that we can to limit that risk.
So, but the county doesn't say, oh, you have to be back in this phase or whichever, nothing like that.
The county doesn't say go ahead and bring students back, but they haven't said to any of the districts don't take the action that you feel is best in your district.
I think in a lot of the things I read coming from the CDC or whoever, there's still enforcing the importance of this, the social distancing. And I look at like the high school or the middle school and like what passing time is. Can you explain to me how that would work? I mean, it's like a free for all. I don't understand how that would work.
The passing time and lunch rooms at the middle school and the high school would be probably the biggest opportunity for people to come in contact with each other. If you remember, in order to be a close contact, they need someone who is a positive case needs to be within that 6 foot distance for 15 or more minutes throughout the day, or have physical contact with someone. And we know that middle school and high schoolers, when they're walking through the hallways, sometimes will have physical contact with each other, especially if it's a larger group. With the A and B cohorts, we've been able to set up one-way hallways so that people are moving in the same direction in the hallway. It's obviously a smaller group that's passing, so it's worked pretty well. I've been impressed by how well our students have done with the hallways. But you're exactly right that by bringing all the students in every day, that becomes a much bigger issue. And we wouldn't be able to maintain the 6 feet of physical distancing. In the classrooms, it might be 4 to 5 feet of physical distancing in some classrooms. It might be more than 6 feet in other classrooms, but it would depend greatly at the middle school and especially at the high school, where we have a wide range of class sizes. It would depend on how many students are in that class and the size of that classroom.
Now, so you said you're going to survey the 4K through 6 parents about switching?
What we would do is let them know that we're considering reopening that window to switch, and detail what that would look like if they made a choice to come on site, and then allow them, and then they would let us know if they're interested in switching one way or the other, so that we'd have an idea of how many students that would be at each grade level at each school.
No, I received a survey last week, but that was for next fall. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe.
Are you plan on doing that same type of survey for all the district families, or for this spring? Yeah.
At the middle school and high school, we're not ready to send that out in this coming week yet. But what we would likely do is if we make the change at the middle school and the high school, it would be the choice that families would have would be to either be fully virtual or to be fully on site. So we would need to know which of those two options they would choose. And we would lay out what it would look like, because there may be some families that are choosing to be on site now because we are able to maintain that physical distancing, that if we ended the AB cohorts, they might decide to be fully virtual rather than being on site every day.
Has there been any discussion with the teaching staff at all about this?
I've had conversations with Renee, Steve, and let her know the conversation that we've been having so far.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks for the info. I think it's a great plan, but I just think it's really important that we don't jump back into this too quick. I guess but the planning is great, but okay, I guess that's just my opinion.
One thought I had, and I apologize, my camera's not working, so hopefully you can at least hear me. I think it's good that we're having this discussion. I don't know what the criteria are or would be at this point for us to go back to in-person, but I don't think it's a discussion that will just happen overnight. So the fact that we're having this discussion now and hopefully in the coming weeks can kind of pin down what benchmarks we would need to reach or want to reach, that would put us in a position to make the decision to go back to 5 days a week in the 7 through 12 environment is a good discussion to have. Again, I don't claim to know what the criteria are, but the fact that we're talking about them and hopefully can lay the groundwork of what they would look like, I think will be important, not only so that we feel like we have a strong decision made, but as parents are watching and kind of monitoring, that they have time to start planning as well for whether it be this fall or later this spring or whenever it is that, again, there's a chance to consider things, have discussions and move thoughtfully. So again, I think it's good that we're having this discussion now, and look forward to whenever the day is that we can go back to 5-day-a-week instruction for the 7 through 12 group.
Well, I'll just in my opinion real quick, and it's probably not going to surprise anyone, and I just think we need to get the, oops, got the wrong one on here, hold on. How's that? There we go. Yeah, so my opinion is not going to be surprising to anybody, but I think that my personal opinion is that we need to get this students in everyday learning as fast as we possibly can, just because I know there's been a lot of hard work with the hybrid learning, but as much as we're trying, and as much as the great work that teachers are doing, the students are still falling behind, and there's still that isolation that can lead to some pretty severe mental or psychological issues. So for me, I think we try to move the students in full time as soon as we can. I think that's what's best for the kids, and especially given the data that's coming out, as far as COVID and schools and whatnot. So I'm in favor of going full time as soon as we possibly can.
Anybody else have a thought that they wanted to share? I would offer just a quick opinion, I guess, if you will. I think I tend to agree with Brian here. I want to be as aggressive as we can to get the kids back in school as soon as we can. To Rich's point about maintaining the balance, I guess I would argue that we are out of balance. I think most folks agree the best place for the kids is in the classroom. So the times that we're not in the classroom, and here again, I would certainly echo the congratulations to from Ryan at the C&I level all the way down to all the teachers delivering our virtual content have done an excellent job. However, the best day virtually pales in comparison to the poorest day in person, in my opinion. So I want to maximize the days that we can get these kids in a classroom with the teachers. And I think Rich hinted at an incredible advantage that we have in this district, timing-wise, with our new spaces. There are districts wrestling with this issue right now that don't have additional space, and will be making compromises relative to spacing and distancing because they just have finite spaces. We have the luxury of having a few more square feet to deal with, albeit maybe not till spring break, but I would like to see us maybe set a goal of getting the kids back in after spring break if we can meet some of the challenges that Rich outlined. I don't want to plow forward at all costs, because we certainly know there are things that we need to address, or questions that folks are going to have, and we need to have solutions thought of for some of those things. But if we can have a plan that's maybe a hint on the aggressive side as far as getting kids in classrooms, that would be something I would support. Okay, anybody else? Otherwise, we will move on. All right. Second half of our superintendent update is going to shift gears just a little bit. I'll invite Jeff Spivak up to the mic, and he's going to give us a little update on some of the athletic and activity events that have taken place and will take place.
Good.
You sure? All right. All right, welcome everybody. So I was asked to kind of recap our winter season, kind of preview going into what our alternative fall season is going to look like, which has already started, actually. It's very interesting. So I'll try to make it brief, just to recap a little bit of what happened this winter. We had some highlights. Our boys basketball team varsity record was 13-4, which was the best winning percentage in a long time. We had a gymnast, Ireland Olsen, who qualified for individual state in bars, floor, and all around. She'll be competing this Saturday, as a Red Hawk in state. Riker Bailey, swimmer, qualified for the 100 butterfly for the state tournament as well, finished 15th place. We had two wrestlers, Riley Nilo and Aiden Sinclair, who also qualified for state, finishing 4th and 3rd respectively. So there's some great highlights. Moving on to my report, I have a chart of sport participation data. So going into this year, participation is a big concern. We knew due to all the uncertainty, all the movement of seasons, I was expecting a dip in participation in our athletic programming, and we did see that. So this fall, we had 153 participants in our programming as a student athlete, everything from basketball to cheer to wrestling to POMs, what have you, which is the lowest participation that we've had since as far back as I could find, which was the year of 14-15. So 153 kids, though, all things considered, with the uncertainty with COVID, I think it's not a negative thing. It's all right. And I'm looking to see over time how these numbers will rebound, and that'd be an important thing to track moving forward. And kind of what our winter and spring numbers are as well. Moving on to COVID-19 and how we operated with COVID-19 about, I stood up here numerous times talking about mitigation practices and processes that we need to follow and we established. And I'm happy to report they're very successful. So since January 2nd, our athletes at Milton High School have competed in 131 games, events, performances, what have you, individual events like that. Throughout those 131 events and countless practices since January 2nd, of our student athletes that were participating, we only had 2 positive cases of COVID. Neither one of those were attributed to participation in the activity. What is even better is that with those 2 positive cases, there was 0 identified spread amongst the team or within the school community. So meaning our mitigation practices worked. So due to these, established practices that we have, effective contact tracing occurred. We had 0 teams quarantined because of those 2 positive cases. Overall, throughout the course of the entire winter season, we had 1 quarantine team for 14 days due to a positive confirmed case of an opponent in which contact tracing could not be done to the extent that we needed it to be. So we quarantined 1 team, and there was no positive cases amongst our kids from that exposure. So in hindsight, I think our mitigation practices, our processes that were established are highly effective. I think a lot of credit goes to our coaches, our kids, and our families for taking it seriously and doing a phenomenal job of following the established protocols. Moving forward, so that's my brief summary on the winter. Moving forward, we have our alternative fall season, which has already started. So what's unique about this season that we have really staggered start times from each sport, trying to accommodate for weather, and we're going to get to weather here in a second. Some kind of highlights of kind of what we're going to face and some interesting, kind of unique situations. For example, for the sport of football, we're going to have to play our first 2 games at Bigfoot and Fall River, respectively, because of weather conditions. We are searching out and utilizing turf fields when we can to play sports like football and soccer, because we have like 3 feet of snow, right? And football starts in 2 weeks. So that's a unique situation in which we have to overcome. Girls golf is golf's going to be interesting as well. Swim, our girls swim team has to, we actually bus or van the girls over to Fort Atkinson every day because, as we already heard today, our pool is now a hole in the ground being filled in. So that's a challenge we have to overcome. Girls tennis.
which starts in 3 weeks. We'll be utilizing PTF in Janesville for practices and has numerous meets at 4 lakes in Elkhorn at their indoor tennis facility to make that season occur due to weather. So all these things are incredibly unique on top of COVID and moving the seasons and all those challenges that are associated with that. So looking at our alt fall season and spring, the challenges that we're going to face that are very significant, number one, is weather, right? Obviously, we look outside, it's going to have a huge impact on what we do. We've spent an incredible amount of time scheduling indoor practice facilities, alternative practice facilities, and game facilities in order to get the practices and games to occur. Also to compound that, the construction projects at the high school make it even more difficult because we have less indoor space to utilize. So we've got very creative in how we're assigning our facilities and the times for all of our teams. So that's a huge challenge. Transportation. Actually, some things happened since I added this, since I wrote this. I've worked with Greg Mueller over at Rightway. Transportation is going to be difficult because we have condensed seasons, which stack more competitions on top of each other. And then there's an overlap between our new alt fall season and the spring season. So there are days where you could have, I think we had a day inadvertently scheduled with 6 road games, including a track team, which would need multiple buses, where if that were to play out, we need 10 extracurricular buses that needed to leave at the same time we're taking kids home from school. All right, so transportation is going to be a huge challenge that we are going to overcome. After talking with Greg at Rightway, I'm really confident now that we can find a way to make that happen, so that's less of a concern. Obviously, COVID-19 has continued to be at the forefront of everything we do. The WIA has released recommendations for fall sports that we will use to guide our practices. We are currently in the process of creating our protocols per fall sport as they arise. So right now we have volleyball and swim. Those are done. We want to collect as much data as possible with these staggered start times before we really nail down the protocols and processes that we're going to use outside and in different facilities. So that reviewing is a constant thing that we're going to do and really nail those down, again, with the most information that we have to write those. The biggest thing that we're going to have a unique challenge with this spring or this alt fall as well are spectator considerations. So it's really simple. When we were inside in our gym, we could have we basically settled on 2 spectators per home athlete. And that was a very good system. It worked very well within our gym because of the size and the scope of that facility. So moving forward for this alt fall, Gym 1 and Gym 2. So for example, volleyball will take on the exact same protocols as basketball did. We're looking at having those 2 home spectators per volleyball games. Now, one thing I'm going to add here is that, with these numbers I'm going to talk about right now, that comes with the assumption, and this is how I'm operating at the moment, that we're going to maintain the exact same expectation for physical distancing within all of our facilities. All right, so that is the assumption that we're making when I talk about the spectator stuff. So the gym is going to remain the same. Anderson Field, we're going to have varsity football and varsity soccer games in the stadium. All lower level football and soccer games will be played at Shieldberg Park, again, in an effort to save the field from being completely destroyed this spring. It will have unprecedented pressure on it during a thaw and a melt with a football season, boys soccer season, and girls soccer season happening almost immediately after one another. In the stadium, this fall when we had the band concert or the band performance, I think we determined we could fit about 190-ish spectators in the stadium, physically distanced the expectation that we had this winter, sitting in 2, 6 feet apart. Under that assumption that we're going to operate that way moving forward, for football games and soccer games in the stadium, we would still operate with that 2 spectator per home athlete number. So if you have, let's say, I think we project to have 58 football players, we have cheerleaders, we have POMs, we're going to hit that 190 threshold with all those parents if we're 2 per spectator, or 2 spectators per athlete. That's where that number comes from. Shieldberg Park and our tennis facility, those outdoor public spaces are going to pose a unique challenge as well. So one of the things that I know I don't have control of is who enters a public park. All right, we don't have gates, we don't have that control. So putting a spectator limit on those events is futile. All right, because we can't guard a park that has a 1 mile radius at all times for a JV softball game. Our focus is going to shift to the maintaining physical distancing and mitigation processes to the people that are there to watch events. And that we believe we can do effectively. So that's going to be a slight change due to the facilities in which we are in. So that's my brief summary of what we've done, where we're going. Any questions? Please ask.
Jeff, thanks for the info and thanks for doing a great job with the winter sports. Just have a question. Well, the student athletes who are doing the golf ball, say they play spring sport, will they be able to do both of those?
Yeah, they just are. And so one of the challenges that our coaches face is this overlap that occurs, and they're going to have to share and play nice, right? And it's a unique situation. So the WIA, or excuse me, the Badger Conference says we can't have athletes play 2 sports in 1 season. Technically, those sports are in different seasons, though they overlap. So, for example, if we have a kid that plays football and then plays baseball, there is a 3-week overlap of football and baseball in which those athletes can do both. All right. So, and I'm really confident. We've had plenty of conversations with our coaches. Our focus is to do what's best for kids, and that our coaches are going to work well and collaborate together to make sure we're doing what's best for kids in those scenarios. So, yes, they can. Short answer, yeah, they can play both.
Good. Thank you.
I had a couple of questions, Jeff. Relative to the alternate fall season here, is there any postseason for any of those teams?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it is determined by the team or by the sport right now. And a lot of that has not been determined. So the WIA has given us this kind of like target of a month before the start of when a postseason would start. They're going to give us that information. So we're kind of flying blind with that. There has been some information that leaked about some sports, like there's supposed to be a golf tournament. There's supposed to be a girls swim tournament series, things like that. I know for a fact football will not have any. So our final game is, for the sport of football is Friday, May 7th against Wanakee. So we scheduled Wanakee week 7 to try to make a special bowl game type environment because there's nothing for football. It's just a football postseason lasts 5 weeks, right? So that's not feasible.
Sure.
So it's really by sport, and a lot of that stuff has yet to be officially nailed down, concrete by the WIA.
Another question, what are we doing or what are we allowed to do spectator-wise at these turf fields that we hope to use?
So, we are anytime, and that's a great question because we're using a lot of non-school facilities in general, right? So when we are at a host school, really there's just a lot of communication that's done. So for example, we're going to go to Bigfoot for our first football game. I've had numerous conversations. They have co-ADs there. It's a little different scenario with both of them about what their expectations are, what our expectations are, and what the expectations of Fort Atkinson are, because that's who we're playing there. When we have those scenarios and there's kind of variances in the expectations, we always, as a group, take the most stringent protocol. Does that make sense? So whatever the most stringent is, so let's say we would allow 2 spectators, but Fort and Bigfoot allow 4, we would settle on 2. Does that make sense? So then nobody would be in violation of their school district's policies. When we go to places like a golf course or Fort Atkinson for swim, or for tennis, we're going to Four Lakes and Elkhorn, we are under the kind of the mandate of their policies, which I have collected or will collect over time to make sure they, meet ours. And if ours are more stringent, we will be more stringent with them as well.
And then the other question I have is is the 2 spectator limit, is that broadly used, or am I correct in hearing that a basketball venue for a tournament game did a 4-person limit?
Yeah, so when I'm throwing out, let's say what I just said about the 2-person limit, those numbers that I have come up with because of our specific facilities, right? So For example, our gym is so small. And then we had to make accommodations to the gym to account for COVID-19, things like that. So our spectator capacity is very, very minimal. So that more than the 2 was just a hard line, period. There are schools, and there's many schools, and there's a lot of schools when we get outside that are saying we're going to play a lot of places that are going to have 4 spectators and that are going to have away spectators. What I propose, I'm not set in stone. To me, that's just the starting point. That number that I came up with, like within the stadium, that is purely based on when we went out there in the fall for that band performance, and we did it up to exactly like we did this winter, the capacity of the stadium grandstands itself. Now, we can get creative with seating in there. We could put chairs on the track. We could do a lot of things. We could group the people in 4 if we have 4s, which would allow for a larger capacity. All those things are possible, and we can go in that direction if that's what we want to do. So, like I said, there is a lot of schools that are going to have at outdoor facilities 4 spectators per athlete for home and away. So we can go in that direction, and we can set up systems to make that work as well. So we're just operating off of right now what we did in the winter.
Jeff, question for you as it relates to the golf season. Given the lack of at least what it appears to be invitationals and using private courses for play on all sides of it, is that season coming together, or are there a lot more challenges you have to be identified because of the private courses, no invitationals, and 2 seasons all at once?
Yeah, so like girls golf especially is the most challenging season right now to try to get off the ground. So we only play duels. There's no large invitationals, again, for social distancing and all those mitigation protocols. We have systems in place, I think, that we're working with golf course owners to kind of break down the traditional sense of having a shotgun start, but having tee times, having staggered starts with groups of kids so they can almost fold them into just a day, they don't have to shut their course down to have an event. So we're getting really, really creative, but you hit the nail on the head as far as, working with private golf course owners, they're running a business. This is incredibly difficult for them as well. But again, it's just getting creative with how we're going to have those duels. And again, we're settling on tee times. We're settling on finding ways to make it, advantageous for the course owners as well. So for us, for girls golf, the biggest challenge still is going to be the weather, and when our course is going to allow us to get on. So we're really looking at, though the season starts a little sooner, we're looking at spring break, probably at the earliest that we could try to get on a course, hoping. So we just have to be really flexible and communicate and to make that work. But that is a challenge.
Jeff, I just want to thank you and your staff and Tracy and everyone who's worked on this and who will be working on this. I want to thank our custodial staff because I know they put a lot of time in setting up things and arranging things. Seeing the kids and being able to see the opportunities they had and that they will have, I think has been a good return on this. So thank you for everything you've been doing.
I appreciate that.
And I think now might be appropriate time to also congratulate and thank all of our student athletes for persevering through a very challenging season. I mean, we postponed our fall one and we're going to undertake that. And then our winter kids got a late start and dealt with compressed practice and game schedule. But hats off to all of them and thanks for their efforts. And we're really, really proud of all of them.
I'll echo that. And, our coaches are the custodian, everybody involved that made it happen this winter definitely deserves like a round of applause because of kind of just the mentality they had, right? We did it. It's nice to be successful. It's nice to send kids to state and have successful teams. But the true purpose of this winter was to give kids opportunities and get them back to a little bit of normalcy. And the fact we were able to execute that, without lost games like a lot of schools had and with consistency and you're right, and seeing the smile on kids' faces and seeing parents come in and enjoy watching their kids play again was phenomenal. So I'll echo that and thank you guys for allowing us to make it happen.
Okay, anybody else for Jeff? Otherwise, thanks and keep up the good work. Okay, we will roll on. Floor is Human Resources Committee report. Mr. Rick.
HR committee met HR committee met last week on Thursday, the 18th. First item on the agenda was the discussion and possible action on 2020-2021 compensation for support staff and administrators and supervisors. Back in December, the board approved the compensation plan for all of the groups that are listed in the memo in board docs. Basically, it's every staff member except the teaching staff, because they were taken care of later on. So since December, the payroll and HR departments have been putting together these the new letters and new contracts to get ready to bring to us. That's what they're getting ready, or that's what they have brought to us tonight for our approval. And then upon our approval, they will be getting these funds out to the staff this week, Chris, right?
That's correct, on Friday.
There's all of those letters and contracts are in board docs. And what did I miss, Chris?
Nothing at all, Rick.
Does anyone have any questions or comments about any of that? I also wanted to just thank the payroll and the HR departments for all their hard work on this, and also thank all the staff for their patience with this whole thing as we put the pause on it last spring and brought it to the board finally to get it approved. So thank you to everyone for your patience. Any questions or anything? Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2020-2021 compensation for the support staff, administrators, and supervisors as presented.
Okay, motion seconded by Jennifer to approve our compensation pieces for everyone outside the teaching staff. Questions on that? All in favor of approval, signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed? That motion clearly passes.
Rick, could you note that I abstained on that vote?
I would be happy to note that.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda was the update on the COVID-19 vaccine for the staff. Chris, can you take that one?
Absolutely. So our first COVID vaccine shot was available for the majority of our staff on January 27th. And then the second vaccine shot was made available to employees on February 17th. So this last Wednesday. And the district pivoted to remote learning for February 17th and 18th, not knowing how the staff would react to the second dose. And then as of February 19th, we had reports of about 80 staff that had requested to work remotely due to not feeling well or caring for school-aged children. Also, we had received word that approximately 36 staff were too ill to work on that February 18th date. And then we had some of those illnesses carry over even into Friday the 19th too. And upcoming this week, the district's second group of employees, there's approximately 40 individuals, will receive their second shot on Wednesday, February 24th, and they received their initial shot on February 3rd. And then the last piece of information, on February 12th, the district shared with Mercy that we have approximately 28 staff remaining that have expressed interest in receiving that first dose. So we're waiting on word from Mercy on accommodating those remaining staff members for that.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Any questions or comments about that? All right, thank you, Chris. The next item on our agenda was the Benefits Advisory Group meeting review. The Benefits Advisory Group met also last week on the 18th after our regular HR meeting. And there is a presentation in board docs. Al Yeager, our benefits consultant, facilitated that discussion. Just a reminder to everyone, back in November, the board approved moving to phase 1 of the Milton Workplace Wellness Approach, which included the implementation of a half-time health transformation consultant. And this position has been filled by Kathy Chambers. So far, she has met with the staff at Milton East. And this is a new position, and it appears that it may take some time and education of our staff in order for them to understand all the services that Kathy offers and the many ways that she can help the staff. Al also presented some data comparing us with many of our surrounding districts. All of that data is in the presentation and board docs. There also was some discussion about the importance of establishing with a primary care provider and how that can go a long way in improving health outcomes and lower insurance costs. And hopefully this is another way that Kathy can help our staff out. Chris, you have anything to add?
I don't.
Okay. Any questions or comments about the Benefits Advisory Group? All right, Joel, that's all I have.
All you got. Very good. Thank you, sir. Okay, down the agenda, 5 is new business. Letter A there is revisiting a topic we started on last meeting, of course, relative to our school calendar. And we charged our administrative folks with developing an option of sorts to address a few of the changes or challenges that we all talked about last meeting. So I will segue here to Rich to kind of give an overview of where that process is.
Yeah, you'll see in board docs, there's 4 different documents. There's 3 calendar options, and I'll highlight the differences between those 3 options. And then there's another document that details the number of instructional minutes with each of those options. Option 1 is the early release day for professional learning communities on every Monday, as was presented at the previous meeting. Option 2 and option 3 are options that still have early release time for PLCs, but less early release time. So option 2 is still every Monday. It maintains that consistency where it's every Monday, but it's for 1 hour per week at each of the levels. And option 3 is the longer period of time, but for 16 Mondays spread throughout the school year. And we're going to highlight a little bit of information on those. I'm going to ask some folks from our admin team to share some information, and then we'll answer any questions that board members have. So Jeremy's going to start by highlighting some information on the instructional time.
I will in one more. There we go. All right. Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, one of the concerns that was brought forth last time were the instructional minutes. And as you see in the handout there, we've highlighted just what the breakdown is. The state required hours of instruction for K-6, it's 1,050 hours, and for the middle school and high school level, it's 1,137. The different options that you see laid out there, we actually put the normal release time and the early release times for all 3 of those. And again, as Mr. Dahman mentioned, the first option, obviously, we had a weekly early release just with a longer time for the K-6. Option 2 does have that consistency of having an early release every Monday, except it actually has high school releasing first, and then the elementaries, high school, middle school releasing first, middle school, or the elementaries releasing afterwards. That's that 1 hour release for each. And then option 3 is the longer time, but just the 16 Mondays. The instructional minutes are on the bottom. As you see, option 1 is pretty typical. That's actually in line with what we often have. It's about 2.5 days over the minimum for the elementaries, and for the secondary, it's about 7.5 days. I mean, it should be noted too that, remember, in all these options, we are having the virtual instruction on the PD days. That's how we're able to recoup some of those minutes. But then options 2 and 3 are relatively similar, with more days over that minimum. I will mention one thing about just from a building from the building level perspective of having a consistent release time on Mondays I think is important. One challenge that we would have with the 16 Mondays, you're having every other day, is the fact that we're going to be guessing what is the release time today, and that communicating that with our families can be a challenge. So that's one of the reasons why we offered up option 2 here, which does recoup some of that additional time, but it also then has a consistent time for Mondays that are not a PD day. So are there any questions at all about the instructional minutes? So all 3 options do meet the requirements for the state of Wisconsin minimum hours of instruction.
So, Jerry, I have a question for you. So you have the data here that says the minimum hours of instruction. It looks like we have 178 days of instruction, and I don't know, it was typically you wanted to have 180 days at one time.
At one time, yeah. But before they changed that to be, used to be 180 days, now they went to hours of instruction.
Okay. So if we were to go back to a normal year, which would have been what, 2018, 2019, how many hours, instructional hours did we have? Do you have that?
I don't have those numbers right here, but those, and Jen Kramer and I work on this together. Typically, we're about 172 to 174 days a year. Oh, okay, so it's going to be very typical similar to what we have with option 1. Generally, it's about 2.5 days for the elementaries, and it's a few more for the secondary, because we're in school longer.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Years prior to this, there wasn't any virtual education, correct? So if there was early release, it was just early release, or if it was a in-service day, it was just an in-service day off.
Correct.
So they're actually getting instruction now on those days.
In the proposed calendar, we do have the asynchronous virtual instruction on those days. That's also when you see we have 178 days. In the past years, it's been 100, like I said, 173, 174.
Thank you.
I'd just like to note that those days were asynchronous days, and that's how you're kind of catching up, so to speak.
With option 1, that makes option 1 work. That's correct.
Right. And just from my perspective and my experience, those asynchronous days are very ineffective, which is going to kind of go towards one of the reasons why I'm going to suggest the route we go.
And just remember, there are 5 of those PD days listed.
We do.
Thank you.
On the screen here.
What are they in the, what were they?
1175 for the high school, 1175 for middle school, 1104. Northside is currently available at different times, and there's 1118 for Weston Southern.
Okay. So there we
That
go.
was 1819.
So that was more for the elementaries. Okay.
And we do have Glenn Ruggles and Susan Probst are going to share some more information, and then we can have some more questions too. So thank you, Jeremy.
All right. So 2 meetings ago, I was up here talking about PLCs, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about PLCs, just so we can all have a frame for what we want that time to be and what the intention of a PLC. So professional learning community, there's a lot of districts that will claim to be a professional learning community district or school. But what we see a lot of times is people for them to ask the 4 key questions around the PLC. And that is, what do we want our students to learn? How do we know that they learned it? What are we going to do when students do not learn it? And what do we do if they've already learned it? Highly intentional structured time all around student learning. shared last time a little bit about the work at Hattie, who talks about what are some of the educational practices that affect student achievement. And the number one practice within schools that affects student achievement is for teachers to develop collective teacher efficacy, meaning teachers are planning together. They know that their time together can impact student achievement and student growth. That is at the heart of our PLC work. In August, we brought in Solution Tree, which is a national organization for professional development. They worked with teams from across our district on our PLC structure, on our response to interventions, and it was just amazing work. And Solution Tree time and time again showed us the data from high performance schools all over the United States that have transformed their schools, whether they were low achieving and they use PLCs to transform their instruction, or they share data from some of their high achievement schools that use PLCs to get even better. So there's examples and examples all over with how PLCs have really transformed schools and districts in the name of student achievement. One of the reasons we brought this plan forward 2 meetings ago, and we just wanted to give a little bit of information about the why of the PLC, is we know it was brought up again tonight, in a normal year. And we've been having some conversations about what does normal look like anymore. Normal years versus a typical year versus an intentional year. In an intentional year, we want real-time response to how our students are achieving on their tests and on their daily work. And PLCs offer an opportunity for a real-time response for our staff to respond to the instruction. We know our students have had lots of different learning experiences this year, whether they're in person or virtual. And even within those two different experiences, our kids have had different experiences based on anything they might have going on at home with their experience of the pandemic. We want to have a set time, real time for our staff to determine and support and respond to all those student needs. And again, it's going to be around the essential standards work and how do we know how our students are performing around those standards. That is at the heart of what we want in a PLC, not just a meeting time, it's highly structured time.
And I'll just speak very briefly about PD days. Every district and every school year is different for PD. It really is based on making systemic changes. So for instance, 2 years ago, Jeremy started at the high school a conversation about trimester, and his PD days dug into what was needed for a trimester and what isn't. But PD days are also for vertical types of alignment. So for instance, all of the music teachers could sit down and meet and talk about the music curriculum, and then how do they embed the SEL competencies into those. It's also an opportunity for all third grade teachers to meet, because on a PLC or an early release, that can't happen to get all four of those buildings together. So a PD day would allow them to sit down and again, look at that big picture planning for the entire year. We have people that are supporting PLCs like interventionists and reading coaches and psychs and counselors. Those PD days are their time to sit down and sharpen their skills so that they can do better at what they're doing and respond to what needs to be happening. PLCs are in the moment response. PDs are kind of that big picture planning to move the district forward.
I guess I have less of a question and more of a comment. The early release days leading into this year were an opportunity for staff to best learn how to deliver virtual instruction since we didn't have prior experience with it. It also gave the staff, the custodial staff, time to disinfect and clean areas. I think in going through that process, we reaffirmed that in-person instruction is the best model for kids. I think we also affirmed the stress points caused for kids, parents, and caregivers from repetitive virtual education. I think another thing that I'd like to recognize is the fact that we, as a community, made a $59 million investment in facilities that are best used with kids in them. I recognize each option that's presented tonight represents more than the required hours of instruction, but I would counter that we are comparing ourselves to the floor and not the ceiling. I don't believe any parents will say their child will benefit from less instruction, but I firmly believe parents will say their child will be more employable, more prepared for college, and more prepared to be an adult because they had access to more instruction. I can accept there's value in creating time for planning outside the traditional class, but believe more than once a month will produce a greater level of lost opportunity among the student body than of opportunity gained. I remember my time as a student and recall finding learning opportunities greatly reduced in partial days. By the time we started doing anything, the class was already over. And so with that, I don't know that I can accept and appreciate that us coming up with ideas to implement more virtual instruction after months and months and months of virtual instruction is the right path forward at this time. I don't know that I can support any of the options that are presented here tonight.
Anybody else with any thoughts on the calendar options? We have to pick a path at some point.
I'll state my quick opinion, especially with the uncertainty of what direction we go next year with the students being either hybrid or virtual or full-time. You know, we really don't know what that looks like. I mean, I hope that everybody is in school, but I just hate to take more time away from students in the worst case scenario. But the other piece is, you know, I really, although there's the asynchronous classes for those PD days, I just don't think they're effective, and they're almost kind of, I mean, some people may disagree with me, but I almost think they're throwaway days. And so because of that, if I were to select any of those options, I know it's a little bit difficult to not have a consistent every week, but I would go with the option number 3, just to make sure that we get the face-to-face contact with the teachers and the students, and, you know, make sure we give them enough excellent quality education that I know our teachers can give, so that, you know, if anybody's behind, we can get them caught up. And, you know, I echo Dave's sentiments where a lot of things, I agree with a lot of things he said. So I guess that's where my thoughts are.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm in favor of option 1 first and option 2 second. PLC time is very dysfunctional if it's held after school. As a teacher, I know that usually in our my PLC meetings, I'd be lucky if 2 or 3 showed up for our grade level because of coaching duties, because of bus duty, because of extra outside duties. So our team was never functionally there, where if you could get the PLC time during the daytime, where all the teachers can be present and don't have outside duties that are going with, conflicting with the PLC time, that it's more effective that way. And I think it also is more consistent, like they said, to have it every week. I think option 3 is just confusing because you wouldn't remember which days are, it's one day, not day, a full day, not 2 weeks of days. It's more consistent with option 1 and 2. And for the sake of the teachers being able to do their PLC time during the school day while all of the teachers are there, it's way more helpful and beneficial.
I can go next. So I do appreciate the fact that this was reviewed and, again, well thought out. I think the the second option, in my opinion. The consistency of each Monday makes a whole lot of sense, both from the teacher's standpoint and certainly the parent's standpoint. I also am very impressed that you reversed the order of the release time. That's an excellent idea, especially for the younger kids, and those are the folks that need the childcare. And I also agree with option 2 because it does put our students back in the classroom for more hours. So again, my vote would definitely be for option 2.
I think that 2 weeks ago, we gave the administration a task of coming back with a compromise. They've done that. Maybe it's not perfect, but it's what we asked them to do. I guess I still prefer option 1 because that's what the administration is preferring. I think option 3 is a bad idea just because of the inconsistency. But we have to come to a consensus on this. So because of that, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2021-2022 school year calendar. I want to make sure I get the right option. Option number 2, as presented.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Rick, seconded by Jennifer, to proceed with calendar implementation according to option 2, which, to summarize briefly, is basically early release on Monday, but consistently across grade levels, like 1 hour early. Am I correct in saying that? So, okay, any other questions on the motion so everyone's clear? Or are there any additional comments before we would vote?
Joe, if I could just add one thing before the vote. We've had, this is the third board meeting where we shared information about the importance of PLCs and of professional development. And we all value the time that students are in classrooms, but in order for that time to be used as effectively as possible, and for that time and for the teachers to continue to develop their skills, we need to give our staff members time to work together to both plan and dig into assessment data so that they can best meet those students' needs. Our admin team has spent a considerable amount of time working through and talking through different options and advantages and disadvantages. And I think Ben Youcher, our assistant principal at the middle school, at our last meeting made the comment that if I was going to cut down a tree, I'd spend 4 hours sharpening the blade. And I think that reinforces the importance of preparing for the work that you do and making sure that we provide our staff with time to do what they do well. We've had discussions about the calendar with Renee Steve, who has reached out to the building reps, and our admin team feels that the options are listed in the order that we think are best for students. Option 1 being the strongest, option 2 being next, and option 3 being the third best of those 3. In discussions with Renee, she voiced some of the same concerns that I'm bringing about the importance of making sure that we have time for staff to hone their skills, to work together, to plan, and to dig into data. She did say that she felt that the teachers could make option 2 work, provided that 1 hour of time each week was clean for them, that they weren't dealing with students who are still lingering at the end of the day and having other disruptions during that time. But she wasn't a fan of option 3 because of the inconsistencies, and our admin team is not a fan of option 3 for those same reasons.
Okay. I guess I would offer my thoughts just before we vote, because I didn't take a chance to yet. And I think similarly. I mean, I prefer option 1. I'm hopeful and want to be supportive of the administrative team and certainly recognize everyone's hard work and effort in putting that together. I appreciate the table or the spreadsheet there showing us the minutes, hours of instruction. I'm a little bit more of the camp that the quality of the minutes matters more than the quantity of them. And obviously PLCs are designed to enhance the quality of the minutes or hours or whatever that our kids are getting. So I do appreciate the compromise. I think it does address several of the concerns that we brought up as far as gaining consistency and yet still giving our teachers that PLC opportunity. And hopefully we can, if in fact this is the option we choose, I would be supportive of number 2. So, okay, any other thoughts? Okay, the motion on the floor is to approve our school calendar along lines of the option 2 parameters. All in favor of the motion on the floor, signify. I'm sorry? You can if you like. So we will poll the audience, starting on my right. And in favor of the motion to support, Dave? No. And Brian? No. And Rick? Yes. And Mike?
Yes.
And Joe is a yes. And Shelley?
Yes.
And Jennifer?
Yes.
Yes. I call that 5-2. Did I count right? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for a lot of very, very intuitive thought on a somewhat mundane topic most years, but obviously of heightened importance this year. So thank you for everyone's insight. Okay, what I think will take a lot less discussion is action on 2020-2021 open enrollment alternative applications. And that summary is included in board docs, and that looks to me like one out, if I'm reading that correctly.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020-2021 open enrollment alternative applications as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Was that you, Brian? That was Dave. I'm sorry, I wasn't watching. Motion from Rick, seconded by Dave, to approve the open enrollment alternative applications as presented. Questions? All in favor of approval signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed? That motion clearly passes. Okay, that exhausts open business. We get up to miscellaneous. And letter A, as is our habit, is our staffing report, copy of which is included in board docs.
I'll make a motion to approve the staffing report as presented.
Second.
Motion from Jennifer, seconded by Rick, to approve the staffing report that you see in front of you. Are there questions on it? I hear none. All in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Staffing report is good. Gifts and donations. I see a list of 4 that $2,294.04.
I'll make a motion to approve the gifts and donations with gratitude.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Rick, seconded by Dave, to approve our gifts and donations with the gratitude of our district. Questions? All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. And opposed? Gifts and donations are good to go. Meeting dates, Mr. Dahman? What do you know?
We have 2 regular meetings coming up in March, Monday, March 8th and Monday, March 22nd. Both of those will be at 6:30 p.m. here at district office. We need to schedule a HR committee meeting for next week and a finance committee meeting for the week of March 8th. So if we want to look at calendars, we want to start with the HR committee. Is there some availability next week? For that week?
Ken, what works for you next week?
This you still want that in 4:30.
If that works for you. You'd like to come like either Wednesday or Thursday, 3rd or 4th.
Sure, Wednesday.
Or we can do it in the evening if you need an evening date.
No, I should be okay on that.
Okay. All right. What time works for you then?
4.
4. Good job.
Wednesday, the 3rd, 4 o'clock for HR.
And then the following week for finance committee.
Rich, are there days that work better than others for you? I'm fairly open that week.
I'm pretty flexible. It will be after, not Monday, because it has to be after Monday's board meeting, but the rest of the week I have, when we schedule that, I usually have some flexibility.
10th or 11th?
You okay with?
I'm super flexible.
Yeah, I am too. I can make almost anything work, so.
Okay. Shoot for Wednesday the 10th.
What time?
In the past, we've been noon. That works for me. If that's, again, I'm not trying to dictate it.
Works for Carrie, Bradley, and I.
I'm good.
At noon?
Yep, let's go 12 o'clock on Wednesday, the 10th for finance. Anything else? Did that cover them? And we are not going to executive session tonight. We can adjourn.
I have a motion.
Rick is Brian on the motion. All in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're done. Thank you, everyone. Travel safe.